Greetings, everyone, wherever you are on the planet or whenever you're watching this in the dance of time. We're back, and for those of you who haven't done this before, welcome. And those of you who have, a lot of you who do as a part of your practice to meditate with us, welcome back. And so today, what do we have? Today we're doing Gamma 40. Okay, and we have a number of really good tracks in WeAwake that attune the brain to gamma. And what is gamma? It's an interesting one. It's a very high frequency as opposed to some of the lower ones that we use in like delta or epsilon or even theta. And it's very they first started learning about it when they were watching the brains or these different techniques they have to see what the brain is doing when Tibetan monks were doing a particular compassion meditation. And they started noticing that the their brains were exhibiting more gamma. And that got people thinking. That was right when they were discovering that meditation was the real deal. And they were finding people who'd been doing it, for practically their whole lives could do some really interesting things. And that's, of course, why we started WeAwake, is to give us some alternatives besides living a monastic life, to focus and to get where we need to be as far as our own interior work and evolution. And that's what these tools are all about. Also, gamma is it can be stimulating. So I recommend that you don't do it more than 2 or 3 times a week. And it is also efficacious in processing massive amounts of data. I don't know if you guys have that issue about massive amounts of data in your life, but I would say yes. You have one of these little things that follows you around. Yeah, then you would be. So that's a good thing. So it's just 20 minutes, 1956, something like that. And extraordinary track. So let's put our minds and hearts together and realize that when we're practicing, we're not just practicing for ourselves, but we're practicing for all sentient beings, those who came before, those who are here now, and those who will come after us. Because in the mind, how should I put this? In the mind of God, there's nothing. Time is something that emerges out of the deep self, but all of these things are still real, still there, and all of these creatures, and who knows how our consciousness, our individual consciousness, plays in and bounces in and out of this whole scenario of the universe evolving and changing. But as my friend Jeff Salzman says, evolution is beautiful, but it's not pretty. And I think we're going through a very rapid time of change. It's just like no generation of our ancestors ever had a time when technology of the world had gone so fast. And I guess right now we're trying to see if we can catch up to have the wisdom and the ethics and the morals to do with these that we have for things other than control and power and manipulation and the darker sides of human nature. So let's hope these things help awaken the angels of our better natures, as I believe Abraham Lincoln said. So without that, let's get into this. Assume the position. Sit up straight as you can, spine straight. Relax your shoulders and your gut, your legs, your arms, your hands, your jaw, your tongue. Tongue's a really good thing to relax. And behind your eyes. So let us begin. Well, that was really beautiful and profound. And sometimes when you're using these different tracks of meditation, there are many goals of meditation. There's the kind of the goal to wake up, to find God, to become enlightened. It's kind of traditional from different um, traditions and different times and different teachers. And now you know, we've we're communicating with everybody everywhere. And they say there used to be, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they thought there were still some tribes left in the Amazon who had never had contact with the modern world. And but whoever they are, if they're human beings, they have a sense of something greater than themselves. They have a sense of spiritual mystery, something that we've all been working on, and a capacity to understand that. And we don't see that too much, or at least they can't communicate it with other species. But this is something we have. So, yeah, we're going through really rough times on, and it's like Humpty Dumpty, is our human family. He sat on a wall, and Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Boom. And Humpty Dumpty is shattered. And so we have so many different levels of evolutionary values that are being represented. For example, Putin, for a pre-modern ruler, he's just not that bad. Yeah, he murders people that threaten him, but that's what kings did. And you want to expand your empire, right? To grow your power, to grow your dynasty, grow your godlike whatever. And that's just been, human beings have been doing that forever. And he's no better and worse. He's just got that kind of value system superimposed on a world that's largely moving out of that. That is now that there's this thing called individual freedom, and that grows into national freedom. A country has the right to, have its own government and do what it wants, et cetera, and work these things out for themselves. And superimposing your particular form of ideas in government in a forceful way just doesn't work. The United States learned in Afghanistan. We wanted to go in and start a democracy and bring Afghanistan to the part of the Western whatever. And these people are just not there yet, and they may not be there for another God knows how long. I don't. Things seem to be speeding up, but that's just where they're at. And do we have to like it? No. Can we fix it? Well, it's subtle. Yes, I guess we can in some ways. Some ways we can't. But all this to say, yeah, given the we are in, we have to find out, our little Humpty Dumpty parts that we are as a group of people here at WeAwake, that people are meditating, our country, however we draw these circles of identification, go, wow, this is broke, and what do I need to fix it, and how does it fit in with the other parts of this big shattered Humpty Dumpty world that we have right now. And I don't know, but my friends in Ukraine have showed us that people are still willing to fight for individual freedom and liberty and their own national destiny, and yes, in their own national story. It's like we're trying to put all these different peoples and stories and mass migration going all over the place, and then it's really a bumpy ride. And how do we let people be themselves, honor it, at the same time bring forward the goodness of each one of those traditions, but with love and compassion begin to slow down the negative parts and do away with that, so we can finally start finding a way to put it all back together. And when it comes back together, I don't think it's going to be a return to the past, but it's going to be a return to the past plus the present plus the future plus. And that's the only way we have to go. So yeah, find out what piece of the puzzle you're at, you are, and what you can do to see how that fits in a compassionate way, in a wise way, so that we can start to bring it all back together. And maybe, we're still in the breaking apart process. I think we felt some years ago, 20, 30 years ago, that things were, the kind of democracy won and blah, blah, this was going to work. And it didn't. I mean, it in some places it did. I mean, Europe has done a magnificent job and cleaning up its old animosities and working together in a peaceful union. It's tremendous. Led the world in that. But things are still weighing in the balance. And Andrew Harvey, a man you should look up if you haven't heard from him. He is I think he studied philosophy from anyway, I can't remember, it's one of the great schools in Britain, and he's an amazing man. And but one of his teachings is that he'll lay down why we're screwed, what are all the problems is, but at the very end he says that one of the good things is that God has an agenda, that there is a higher power, and consciousness is the stuff that everything comes from. And then there's really no nothing. Even when they can isolate nothing, it just stuff comes out of it, so we have this very mysterious world, and we keep finding out more and more. And one of our latest lenses on reality, the James Webb telescope, is showing us things that we don't know how to do, because it seems to contradict a lot of the stories that we had before. So what happens if the mystery starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the more and the deeper we look? And that mystery is us. We came out of the stardust. We came together in this very short period of time, and we seem to have a part of us deep inside that holds all the answers, and is that place of wisdom and growth and compassion and hope and all of that. And that's in each one of us. And I think the function of us as individuals is to contact that part of us and be willing to go through the pain too, and accept the darkness and accept the crucifixion, if you will. And I was talking to Ken Wilber one time, and we were speaking about Christianity, and a fascinating subject, which is I've been involved in from years. I was grown up Catholic, and then I had here it is. It given me this little New Testament school at Gideon's New Testament. And I remember writing, I got it May 2nd, 1967. So with a little date in there. And so anyway, I was in my room trying to figure out things. My oldest brother was an infantryman in Vietnam. My other brother was a hippie who was doing psychedelics and ran away to be in New York and California and all this. And I was a little kid left at home trying to figure this all out. So I started reading the New Testament. I got to chapter 5, Matthew, which is the first book, one of the four Gospels, and started reading the Sermon on the Mount, and just something broke through. And I got this: God is love, and God is everything. And God is love, and God is everything. God is everywhere. I wouldn't say it was non-dual, because I certainly didn't know that terminology or those intellectual concepts at the time, but it was like tremendously relieving. And I tried to tell my parents about it, and it was like, they didn't quite get it. And I was shocked that it came from this thing that Jesus was saying. And I've been going to church my whole life, and I didn't have a negative Catholic experience. It was just, just going to church. Nobody ever messed with me, or it was just, it was boring for me. And I didn't, I went to catechism and went through all the stages, confession, communion, etc. Went through all that, but it didn't hit me in a deeply personal way. So anyway, this transmission came through this guy whose statues and images I saw all over, but nobody seemed to be really saying what he just told me through his writings or through that spiritual encounter. So yeah, and as Ken was saying, the story, whether how do there's many ways to look at Christianity. You can look at historically. Okay, well, all right, did Jesus really exist? That's a big one. If you want to get into that, go to YouTube. You have all kinds of different perspectives. But what do we know from history? Well, we know a lot because there were written languages in these colliding cultures. There was Greek and there was Hebrew and there was Latin. And so we know a lot about the times. And they built a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff survived. Most of it didn't, but a lot of it gave us an idea of what was going on. So we can look at it that way. And then we can look at it the literal way, which is the way the early church or evolved into the Roman church, kind of decided, okay, we've got all these different followers of Jesus and they have different stories and they have different gospels and they have different things. And we got this empire we got to run and it's falling apart. And we need Christianity to kind of hold us together. It's Constantine and, eventually made Christianity the official religion of Rome. That was anyway, but the idea was there was an article of faith that you had to learn, and Jesus died and his blood redeemed us, and forgiveness of sins and the blood sacrifice of the Son of God and all this stuff. And coming, back in that day, that probably made a lot of sense to a lot of people because a lot of the religions or many religions around then, they sacrificed and they gods and and there were a lot of sons of gods, men that were born of a union between a woman and a god happened quite a bit. So for them to say that about Jesus, it's like, okay, what else? Right? We've heard that story a lot. So, but it doesn't make much sense anymore. And most of us don't look at kingdom and the king as the model of what we want to do. We have democracy. So maybe we can come up with the democracy of heaven instead of the kingdom of heaven. It will evolve into that. But on the other hand, there's a mythic interior story of the gospel, and that's the story of this divine son, which is really all of us, okay? And he has to go through and he has to incarnate, for some reason, has to be in this zone, this plane, and go through all this stuff. And he's waking up to who and what he is and who and what you and I are. And he's trying to communicate that. And of course, that runs into all kinds of religious and political problems. And he ends up getting tortured to death and crucified in a really awful way. And, he goes to this, and this death and crucifixion is a part of being a sentient being. We do that. We go through things and we die. And then, but what happens? And then that's just where the story really begins. And then there's the time of death and darkness, and that 3 days between the crucifixion and then the resurrection. Then he's resurrected in a new form, a new level of consciousness, a new biology, it even seems. And that's a heck of a story. So what I get out of that and interpreting that for our broken Humpty Dumpty world right now is that, we have to go through the crucifixion of our current state of being. And that's can be an awful and painful and scary time of darkness. But that is part of it. That's how we're reborn. And you look at birth, physical birth of a human being. It's a painful, bloody, glorious process, right? And to think that we're going through that now. So the best we can do is finding our little piece of the Humpty Dumpty puzzle that we are, identifying with that. And there's a really little dinky thing. It contains the truth of everything in it. It's kind of a holographic way of the universe was put together. Every little bit contains the whole. And so as we begin to find that piece of us, our interior space, and that begins to reflect into the way we walk on the earth and the way we negotiate our relationships and the way we live our lives, then we have something. And then we start building a future that is more beautiful. And this human thing become, but I don't think it's going to happen without a lot of effort on our collective and individual parts. And it's going to take a lot of grace, shall we say, dumb luck. That's another way of saying that. The intervention of higher consciousness into our individual struggle that wakes us up, clears us up, heals us to be the people and what we need to be. So anyway, that's just a little bit of what was going through my head today when I was on Gamma. So Gamma is a thing where you can do a lot of thinking, apparently. And yeah, thinking is a good thing. So what we don't want to do is just useless thinking where we just get lost. But when we get into that wisdom zone, sometimes we can come up with solutions and understandings and wisdom that makes life more bearable and understandable and hopeful and beautiful and affirmatively yes. So that's probably enough. Anyway, thank you guys for showing up again. And we love you. And let's do better today than we did yesterday.